The MonsterVerse's first console game has officially released, Kong: Survivor Instinct. It's here, and this is what we think about it. First off, let me read you the synopsis. A sudden Titan attack prompts massive evacuation efforts, but not everyone makes it to safety before the devastation ensues. Caught in the crossfire between battling monsters, many residents become trapped in the collapsing city, your only daughter among them. Survivor Instinct is a 2.5D side-scroller developed by 7 levels, where you have to maneuver around a crumbling city, fighting off Alan Jonah's gangs and avoiding gigantic monsters. And for those that saw the trailer and thought it looked interesting, you might be pleasantly surprised. But if you weren't convinced then, the game isn't going to do much to change your mind. We know this isn't the game that fans have been wanting. The fact it's been over 10 years since the MonsterVerse began, and we still don't have a Titan fighting game is simply baffling to me. Come on, Legendary, what's going on? That said, it's worth looking at this as its own thing. It's from a low-budget studio who have clearly put a lot of passion and effort into making this their best game yet. And after looking at their existing library, I'm fairly confident in saying it's just that. First, let's get the negatives out the way. The combat in this game is pretty rough. Having to use 4 different buttons to block, dodge, parry, and melee can get a bit overwhelming in extreme situations, and sometimes it would start to feel like I was button mashing whenever I was cornered by 3 or more guys. I feel like it could have been simplified to make it a bit more intuitive, because as of right now, combat feels like a bit of a chore. Also, throughout the game you'll see interactable scenery like destructible floors and walls, and sometimes these can be pretty hard to see, leaving me to need to check my map and realize I've been walking past one for the past 10 minutes. It can be easy to miss them, especially when there's a lot happening with the visuals. Also, in terms of the story, that ending is just rough. I won't spoil it, but it's massively underwhelming, and feels like the devs just had to stop what they were doing and just release it as it is. And one thing that I was pretty massively disappointed about was Abaddon. No, not the design of the Titan or its set pieces, those were some of the best parts of the game. I'm talking about the lack of it. Despite being hyped up in the marketing and the upcoming declassified comic, Abaddon has a very minor role in the story, appearing for 1 set piece in the middle of the game, and has a pathetically short fight with Kong. I thought she'd appear later in the game, but nope, you never see her again, which is crazy considering how much promotion she got. And one minor thing is they don't really have the monsters represented as their true size. Instead of being 350 feet tall, Kong is more like 200 feet tall and sometimes 100 feet, depending on the set piece. Obviously, this was done because it's a game and he needs to interact with the player, so it's more of a nitpick than anything. But as far as negatives go, that's pretty much all I have, because I did really enjoy this game. The gameplay for the most part is super smooth, you can traverse the landscape really easily and use the tools at hand to get from place to place in unique and interesting ways. And when I heard this was a Metroidvania style game, I was worried it would slow down and get boring due to backtracking, but no, this surprisingly never tests your patience, and for the most part paces itself nicely, always giving you something to do to make it feel like you're naturally progressing forward instead of staying in one level for too long. And the way you maneuver around the levels is actually really nice. The gameplay is super smooth, jumping from ledge to ledge, sliding, grappling and breaking walls, all feels really nice. I especially like how you just straight up tear off doors at their hinges. Dad's got super strength. One of my favorite games as a kid was Abe's Odyssey, and this really reminds me of that, so can't fault it for that aspect. And let's talk about the graphics, because they're actually really nice. Considering this was made on a budget, there is tons of details hidden in the map, which really shows that the devs had an eye for detail. Sure, the in-game character models aren't the highest quality, the animation is a little stiff, and the lip syncing isn't the best, but this isn't exactly aiming for Game of the Year. They used their limited resources wisely and delivered some pretty great visuals, with each level having something different and uniquely striking, whether it's the cobwebs of Titanus Abaddon's nest or the pink goo from Tiamat's acid spray. On top of the visuals, of course the sound design deserves some recognition. Because it really is very good. You hear the creaks and cracks as buildings fall apart and the stomps of the approaching titans. And the music really helps build the scene and always make sure you're not just listening to nothing while you try and figure out where you're meant to go. Also, in regards to the playtime, I was expecting under 4 hours or something, but after finishing it, it actually took a healthy 7.5 hours. And I felt like I was rushing it in places, which means it will be even longer if you're not overly experienced in side-scrollers. So you'll no doubt get your money's worth with a game with a price tag as low as $20. Part of that runtime is spent finding Monarch documents that have some pretty nice lore. The game really helps fill in the gaps of the MonsterVerse, finding out what Alan Jonah has been doing after King of the Monsters, or what happened to these Skullcrawler babies after Godzilla vs. Kong, and even why Tiamat was being so aggressive in the New Empire. There's lots of good stuff in here that helps the franchise feel more like an established universe. Overall, this game was a pleasant surprise to me. Its gameplay is super addictive, simple to grasp, but challenging at parts. It does a lot to grow the universe and provides a new method of delivering a MonsterVerse story. I'm sure people would prefer a monster fighting game, I would have as well, but for what it is, it's a solid side-scroller. There could be some improvements to be made in a sequel, like moments where you actually control the monsters, switching back and forth, which only emphasizes how ant-sized your human player really is when you switch back to him. And like Abe's Odyssey, there could be moments where you have to help injured survivors and escort them to safety, with the amount of people you saved maybe even having an impact on the ending. There's lots of cool stuff they can do, and hopefully they can include Godzilla next time. If I was someone that wasn't a fan of the MonsterVerse, I could imagine this getting a score of 5 or 6, since its selling point is that you're running around a city and uncovering secrets about Monarch and the Titans. But if you're someone who loves the series and wants to experience it in different ways, this will appeal to you a lot more. So for Kong Survivor Instinct, we're going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's not a perfect game by any means, but there are some outlets being unnecessarily harsh to this game, judging it with the same standards that they judge a AAA game at, which this is not. IGN can't help but compare it to Metroid Dread, a game with an infinitely higher budget from the monolithic gaming titan Nintendo, so it's a bit unfair to compare the two with equal expectations. The game offers what it has to offer and does a solid job at being an entry-level side-scroller in the Metroidvania subgenre. And it's worth remembering that the success of this game will ultimately decide the fate of the future MonsterVerse video games. And if it does well, we'll get a Godzilla game or even that fighting game that fans have been demanding. Survivor Instinct is just one step into the foray of MonsterVerse games, and I think it does a pretty great job. And it's worth picking up today if you're a fan, or waiting for it to go on sale if you aren't as much into the MonsterVerse. What do you think about Survivor Instinct? Let us know in the comment section down below, and be sure to subscribe and stomp the notification button to become a resident of Dangerville today. Special thanks to Goji Guy for providing the footage you've seen in the video. I've been Alistair, and we'll see you residents in the next one.